5-year-old witness, 2 brutal murders, and the most shocking killer revealed in Texas crime history. March 7, 2014. 2 women, both 24, found savagely murdered behind a Texas gas station. One beaten to death with terrifying brutality, the other executed with a single shot to the head. But who could commit such heartbreaking violence?
Did you ever see blood in his room? Tell me where you saw blood.
There was blood splatter in his room.
The killer left behind a bloody fingerprint, a digital trail, and a witness who saw everything. But when investigators discovered who committed these horrific crimes, even they couldn't believe it. This is the disturbing true story of how pure hatred drove someone to the unthinkable. Watch the video till the end because the killer's identity and his interrogation will shock you to your core. March 7, 2014. Port Bolivar, Texas. 7:30 a.m. A beer delivery driver pulls into the parking lot of Fisherman's Cove convenience store for what should be a routine morning drop. But beside the dumpster behind the store, he makes a discovery that will shatter 2 families and expose a horrifying truth about what hatred can drive a father to do. 2 young women, both 24 years old, both from Houston, both brutally murdered. One beaten to death with blunt force trauma, the other shot execution style in the head. Their bodies were dumped like garbage behind a convenience store on the Texas coast. What the investigators didn't know yet was that the killer wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. The killer was their family member, and the motive, pure, unadulterated hate. Brittney Cosby and Crystal Jackson, 2 women who found love in each other and built a life together in Houston's vibrant Sunnyside neighborhood. Brittney worked at Starbucks, starting her days before dawn to serve coffee to Houston's early risers. But her real job, her calling, was caring for her 90-year-old great-grandmother, Annie Lee Cosby, who had raised her when her own parents couldn't. Crystal was a security guard, strong and protective by nature. She was also a devoted mother to her 5-year-old daughter, Zaniah, a bright little girl who called Crystal's girlfriend Aunt Brittney. The couple had been together for 2 years, since February 24, 2012. They lived in Annie Lee's house, creating a multi-generational home filled with love, laughter, and hope for the future. But there was someone else living in that house. Someone who watched their happiness with growing resentment. Someone who saw their love as an abomination. James Larry Cosby, Brittney's father, a registered sex offender with a violent past who had just been released from prison 5 months earlier in October 2013. And he had a problem with his daughter being gay. March 6, 2014, Thursday evening. Brittney and Crystal climb into their newly purchased 2006 Kia Sorento, with one headlight burned out. They're heading toward Galveston for what should be a peaceful evening by the coast. But they're not alone on this journey. At 9:18 p.m., ferry surveillance cameras capture their silver SUV boarding the Galveston Bolivar ferry. The broken headlight catches the attention of a ferry worker named Ingram, who approaches the vehicle. What Ingram doesn't realize is that he's about to become a key witness in a double murder. He peers into the driver's window, noting the man behind the wheel. Later, he'll struggle to remember exactly what he saw that night, a struggle that will become crucial to the case. The ferry ride takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of crossing the dark waters between Galveston and Bolivar Peninsula. The last 20 minutes that Brittney and Crystal will ever see. But here's what investigators will later piece together, and it's more terrifying than anyone could imagine. By the time that ferry docks on the Bolivar side, both women may already be dead. Because James Larry Cosby's cell phone tells a story. A story of a journey from Houston to Bolivar Peninsula and back to Houston in the dead of night. A digital trail of murder. When police arrive at the Fisherman's Cove convenience store that morning, they find a scene that immediately tells them this isn't where the murders happened. This is a dump site. The killer brought the bodies here to dispose of them. But killers always leave clues, and this killer left plenty. Near Crystal's body, investigators find something unusual, a decorative wooden shutter. It doesn't belong at this gas station. It belongs in someone's home, and it's covered in blood. On Brittney's head, A sheet. Not just any sheet, but one that matches a set from a very specific house in Houston. The medical examiner's findings paint a gruesome picture. Crystal Jackson died from a single gunshot wound to the head. But Brittney Cosby's death was far more brutal. Blunt force trauma. Multiple strikes to her head and neck. Someone beat her to death with savage fury. But here's where it gets disturbing. The crime scene suggests Crystal was killed first, probably in the house. Her body shows she was beaten there, in that converted garage where James Cosby slept. Crystal. She was shot in the back of her own SUV. One bullet to the right side of her head, execution style. Think about that. A father shoots his own daughter in the head while she sits in a car. What kind of hatred drives a parent to do that to their own child? But there was someone else there that night. Someone who saw and heard everything. Someone whose testimony would become the most heartbreaking part of this entire case. Zaniah, Crystal's 5-year-old daughter.
Would you come sit right here for me? Do you like to color? Zaniah, what is the first thing you do when you get to school?
Eat breakfast.
Eat breakfast. And then what happens after you eat breakfast? Tell me everything that happened from that morning to the time you went to sleep.
The morning when I was getting ready for school at nighttime, my mama was in the car, me and her, and my mama said, "Stay in the car," and I stayed in the car. I said I was taking my mom so long, so I went in there to find out, but nobody was in there.
You said when you were sitting in the car you heard something?
Yeah, it was like going like zzz. Like somebody was lasering somebody.
Like somebody was what?
Lasering.
Tell me who all was at that house when you were there going to sleep.
It was just me and her mama, and I forgot the other boy name.
The other boy's name?
That's Brittney's brother.
Brittney's brother. You don't remember Brittney's brother's name? Is he big like me or little like you?
He's tall.
He's tall. Did you ever see blood in his room? Tell me where you saw the blood.
There was blood splatter in his room. He just decided to kill my mother and his daughter.
Tell me where the blood splatter was in his room.
On his bed.
You saw it on his bed? Okay. Did you see it anywhere else?
On his floor.
And some on his floor? Did you ever hear anything from his room? Tell me everything you heard from his room.
A gunshot.
You heard a gunshot. Tell me how you know it was a gunshot.
Because he just, in his room, he just said, "Bang." He took them to outside and just shoot them.
Okay, did somebody tell you that or did you see that?
I see that.
This little girl was there, in the car, while her mother was being murdered inside the house. She heard Crystal being beaten to death. A 5-year-old child listened to her mother's murder through the walls of that house. "He just assigned to kill my mother and his daughter." The words of a 5-year-old who witnessed something no child should ever see. As investigators dive deeper, they uncover a digital trail that leads straight back to one person, James Larry Cosby. His cell phone records reveal everything. On the night of March 6, 2014, his phone traveled from Houston to Bolivar Peninsula and back to Houston, the exact route the killer took. But here's the twist that breaks the case wide open. Days after the murders, Cosby gets into a car accident in Houston. Road rage. He calls 911. That 911 call gives police his phone number, which allows them to trace his movements on the night of the murders. The killer literally called the police and gave them the key to solving the case. When investigators search the Cosby family home on Annie Lee's property, they find what they're looking for: blood, lots of it, throughout James Cosby's converted garage living space. On his bed, on his floor, splattered on the walls. Someone had tried to clean it up. Fresh cleaning supplies, recent scrubbing, but you can't erase murder that easily. And then they find the smoking gun, or rather, the smoking fingerprint. Remember that decorative shutter found next to Crystal's body? The one covered in blood? It has James Cosby's fingerprint on it. His bloody fingerprint. The evidence is overwhelming. DNA from cigarette butts in the abandoned SUV. The sheet from his house covering Crystal's head. Blood throughout his living space. His phone traveled the exact route the killer took. But James Cosby maintains his innocence. March 13, 2014. 6 days after the bodies are discovered, James Larry Cosby is arrested and charged with tampering with evidence. Bond is set at $500,000. But investigators know they have their killer. They just need him to confess. For almost 6 hours, Cosby sits in that interrogation room, talking to detectives.
Where's the car?
I can't help you with that. I don't know where the car is.
Only one print was found on that scene. Guess who it belonged to?
What's that?
James Larry Cosby Jr. No one else. Guess what we found in James Larry Cosby Jr.'s bedroom? His daughter's blood. Everything points back to James Larry Cosby Jr. And you expect us to believe that James Larry Cosby Jr. don't know? You need to man up. What happened to your daughter? So far, you haven't given up. You ain't told us how your print got out there on the scene.
Can't explain that.
Can you explain to me why or how in your room that carpet is saturated with fresh blood?
He never admits, but here's what's really chilling about James Larry Cosby. This isn't his first violent crime. He's a registered sex offender with a 1994 sexual assault conviction. In 2011, he was sent back to prison for failing to register as a sex offender. He was released in October 2013, just 5 months before the murders. 5 months of living in that house, watching his daughter and Crystal's relationship, letting his hatred grow. Family members would later say he did not like his daughter being gay. That's putting it mildly. This man's homophobia was so intense, so consuming, that it drove him to commit the ultimate betrayal, murdering his own child. August 2nd, 2016. Galveston County Courthouse. After more than 2 years of legal proceedings, James Larry Cosby finally faces trial for capital murder. The prosecution's case is methodical and devastating. Prosecutors said all the evidence leads back to one person. They present the bloody fingerprint on the shutter, the cell phone records, the DNA evidence, the ferry surveillance footage, the witness who saw the driver that night. But that ferry witness testimony creates a problem for the prosecution. Ingram, the ferry worker who stopped the SUV for the broken headlight, initially identifies someone else in a photo lineup with 100% certainty. Later, when shown Cosby's photo, he's only 50% sure. The defense argues there are 6 different puzzles they're trying to push together in this case. No murder weapon was ever found. No single clear motive was proven beyond the family's claims about Cosby's homophobia. But puzzle pieces don't lie. And when you put them all together, they form a picture of a father who committed the unthinkable. The defense tries to create reasonable doubt. They point out that the case is circumstantial. They argue that Cosby cooperated with investigators, talking for almost 6 hours without a lawyer. But the evidence is overwhelming. James Larry Cosby murdered his daughter and her girlfriend because he couldn't accept their love. August 10th, 2016. After 7 days of testimony, the jury deliberates for just 3 hours. 3 hours to decide the fate of a man who destroyed 2 lives and shattered multiple families. When they return, the verdict is swift and decisive. Guilty of capital murder. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even as justice is served, the true horror of this case becomes clear. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a moment of rage that got out of hand. This was premeditated hate. James Cosby didn't just kill his daughter and her girlfriend, he tortured them. He beat Crystal to death with his bare hands or a blunt object in his own living space while her 5-year-old daughter waited in the car outside. Then he took his own daughter, put a gun to her head, and pulled the trigger while she sat in the back of her own SUV. Think about Brittney's final moments. Sitting in that car, probably already knowing that Crystal was dead. facing her own father as he pointed a gun at her head. What were her last thoughts? Did she beg for her life? Did she ask why? We'll never know. But we do know this. James Larry Cosby looked into his daughter's eyes and chose hate over love. He chose murder over acceptance. But here's the final twist that shows just how calculating this killer really was. After committing these brutal murders, James Cosby had to dispose of the bodies. He loads them into the Kia Sorento and drives to Port Bolivar. Why Port Bolivar? It's remote. It's across the water from Galveston. He probably thought the bodies wouldn't be found for days or weeks. After dumping the bodies behind that convenience store, he drives back to Houston and abandons the Kia near a strip club. He thinks he's covered his tracks. But murderers always think they're smarter than they are. And James Cosby wasn't smart at all, he was just evil. But perhaps the most damaging evidence, Zaniah's testimony haunts everyone who hears it. Brittney and Crystal were just 24 years old. They had their whole lives ahead of them, plans to make, dreams to chase, love to share. Instead, they're buried together at Houston Memorial Gardens in Pearland, their love story cut short by a father's hate. Crystal's daughter Zaniah was placed in the care of her grandfather, Reverend Ivan Jackson, who must now help a little girl process the unimaginable trauma of losing her mother to violence. Our hearts go out to their families and to little Zaniah, who lost her mother to senseless hate. Rest in peace, Brittney and Crystal. If you want to see more deep dive investigations into true crime cases like this one, subscribe to Evidence Eye and hit that notification bell.